everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Poker News podcast. I'm your girl, Sarah Herring, joined by Jeff Platt and Chad Holloway, coming hard into this 2021. I know it maybe hasn't been exactly what everyone was expecting. Everyone was expecting like a fresh cup of tea for 2021. But what we're in here right now to talk about are the top 10 stories that came out of 2020. Where we are, you know, you've got to know your history if you're going to know your future or your present, or so. I know there's some kind of like thing about that. So we're going to take a look back at 2020. But before we do, I just want to catch up with my boys. First of all, Chad, you've been hella busy per the usual, all over town in Las Vegas. You stayed in Las Vegas well after I left. Are you recovering back in the Midwest?
Yeah, it was definitely a big end to 2020. Usually we have that holiday break right when the WSOP decided to plant their foot in the ground and say, we're going to do this final table. We're going to do this heads up challenge. And it was great. It was fun. It was nice to be at the Rio, to have boots on the ground, to see the ESPN set up and get to see some of the production staff. And Jeff, you and me were all in the same place. You know, we had the live show, which was great. So it was fun, but I was definitely excited to get back home because it satisfied my WSOP craving. It wasn't the same thing. And Vegas right now just isn't the same. With the pandemic going on and all the restrictions in place, it was still fun. I still had some good experiences, but it's just not the Vegas that I've come to love and know.
It's the absolute worst. And I do know several people now who were there at that time who have the Rona. So what's up, Jeff, back at the ESPN crew? Did anyone like scoop the Rona while we were all together? I mean, the Rio, like the WSOP had its own disease. So like if we can't at least like spread the Rona to each other while we're at the Rio, I don't know what we're doing.
Yeah, that's true. You know, as far as I've heard, so far so good with everything and with everybody. We did have that bubble system in place. So they were testing us every single day before allowing us into the back. And then maybe when it ended, Damian Salas' whole crew just kind of stormed the stage and the bubble broke. And maybe that sparked everything. I don't know. Who knows? But Sarah, I'm really excited about this podcast because there's no year I'd rather just dive into and look back on and be excited about than 2020. So let's do it.
Let's just get it going. And we will, of course, as we get deeper into it, talk more about what Jeff has going on in his life right now. He's always got those very exciting bougie projects. You know, he makes the big money. We all know Jeff is the rich one.
Very rich.
In the team. And before we get too deep into it, we just want to give a shout out to our sponsors. Sponsor of the top 10 stories of 2020 is our homies at Oddschecker. We will have for you guys a little snippet about them at the end of the show. We are going to do this in the traditional style, as we always do, from the bottom story to the top story. And I have to tell you guys, we will talk about this as it goes, but like, I really didn't agree with the order that a lot of these ended up in. And I'll tell you guys where I feel like it mixes up. You can tell me that too. Number 10, I feel that this probably should be maybe Chad. I'm not sure who should be in charge.
He wrote it.
Yeah, I wrote it. I think I'd be a good contender.
So this one could be him.
Let me tell you real quick, the listeners, how we go about compiling these top 10 every year. So what it is the editor of PokerNews, basically polls everybody associated, the writers and staff, to come up with a list of what they think were the biggest stories of the year. Then they cross book them, if you will, and find the biggest stories. And then it is kind of just, where do you think they rank? And we vote upon them. And so sometimes, Sarah, like you said, maybe you think they should be in a different order, but the overall vote says otherwise. And number 10 was the WSOP.com bracelet winner. So this was the July slate of events on WSOP.com to players in Nevada and New Jersey. We were all wondering, like, is this going to take the place of the summer WSOP? Is it going to have that same sort of feel? What's it going to be like? And it definitely wasn't the same WSOP we come to know, in the summer in person, but it actually ended up being a pretty decent substitute, I think. And that's because of some of the bracelet winners and the stories that emerged out of that 31 event series. It started off right away with Phil Hellmuth and Daniel Negreanu making deep runs. They didn't capture any bracelets, but they made deep runs, which really, I think, energized the poker world. And then from there, we just had every few days, at least, we had some good stories. One of them was Ryan DePaulo winning his bracelet at the parking lot of a Whole Foods in New Jersey. And he's a popular vlogger. He's a character, and that just really I think was the first fire that lit, if you will, from the WSOP.com bracelet events. Then you had Joe McKeon, former main event champion, winning his third bracelet. Ron McMillan, the older gentleman who was playing online for the very first time. He had his viral moment. It was the viral moment of the summer bracelet events, in my opinion, where he's playing from his hotel room with some friends watching him and recording him. He hits his card and, he gets very excited and goes all out. You had Alan Gehring, who finished runner-up in the 1999 WSOP main event to Noel Furlong. He missed out on a bracelet right there. He comes back. He wins 2 WPT titles in the early days, like during the poker boom, but that bracelet eluded him until 21 years later, gets it done this summer by capturing one. That was a good story. And then Michael Leck, an 8-time WSOP circuit ring winner, takes down a bracelet and continues his hot streak. And a former guest on the Poker News podcast, Pat Lyons, Ichikawawa baby on his screen name, he ends up winning a bracelet to pad his poker resume. And then, of course, in the final event, we get a woman winner. Narain Tamaro goes by Two Rivers Online. She closed it out, so that was just a great story all around. And I don't know, it just put an exclamation point on what I thought was a very strong month, July, for poker, and it's because of all these great bracelet winners.
Our numbers always go crazy. Actually, it was kind of depressing. Like, I should probably be fired. But as I was looking at our, analytics from last year compared to this year and sort of going through what happened and, where did we hit, where did we miss? The WSOP is like 50% of our coverage, our hits, our, people love the World Series of Poker. And even in this WSOP online pseudo World Series of Poker, that's where we saw most of the action and most of our hits from the year 2020. So clearly that is what people want to see. And we just got, I think, really lucky that we did actually have some really interesting, really good, juicy stories. Thank you, Ryan DePaulo, for being 500,000 hits on the interview we did with you, at least. But here's a story that, as I was compiling this list today, I was kind of like, what? I don't know how I missed this or what's going on. And Jeff, maybe maybe you can explain. The number 9 story on the Poker News list is the end of the Black Friday saga, which I just thought never ends, really. So what is going on here?
Right. I was certainly interested when I saw the headline, and perhaps Chad can chime in also, but it mainly revolves around Isai Scheinberg, the last of 11 individuals charged in that indictment from the Department of Justice on Black Friday on April 15th, 2011. And I think the door is open now. The door is certainly open now for Isai to be a part of the Poker Hall of Fame in the future. And that is because he can come back into the United States of America. $30,000 fine, sentenced to time served, so no jail time for Isai Scheinberg. And for those of you who don't know, Isai Scheinberg was the man behind PokerStars, was the man behind the biggest online company of the world. I think he did amazing things. Did they go about their business practices the right way in the eyes of the United States government? I guess that is a no, but they reimbursed millions of players around the world who were screwed over, not by their own site, but by Full Tilt. They buy Full Tilt and then they reimburse player after player after player. So I think the end, quote unquote, to the Black Friday saga is Isai's back. There's no prison sentence for Isai. He pays his fine and he can be in the Poker Hall of Fame.
I always thought this was so interesting because PokerStars paid back their peeps right away. Clearly, whatever, their banking situation was, they had the money that they needed to have easily and on hand, and players who had their money on PokerStars were immediately paid back, where we're looking at 2.5 to 3 years. And even I think some players are still there's questions about the amounts and these things, but they did, 3 years later, as PokerStars acquired Full Tilt, pay back the Full Tilt money. And this is always, confused me as a business move. Chad, do you understand why anyone would ever do this except for just to be awesome and generous?
No, really, there is no other reason, unless it's just maybe be generous, but at the same time, it is a good look, in the eyes of maybe the government and things like that. But I do think it came from a place of just trying to do the right thing. I mean, I've never met Isai Scheinberg in person, but from all accounts that I've heard, he is that sort of guy. He really did care about the game of poker. He did care about the players, and he found himself in a position to do that, and did. I mean, it was quite incredible. As I enjoyed getting, I don't know, I had $200 or $300 on Full Tilt at the time. I enjoyed getting that back, but I know there were others who had a little fortune online, and I got to imagine that they were super excited to have that come down. And in their eyes, a guy like Isai Scheinberg is certainly a hero just because of that fact alone.
Yeah, I mean, I think as we talked about when we were, talking about the Hall of Fame, Isai Scheinberg is a legend, I think, in poker history in a lot of ways. But really, you could even say anyone who founded Poker Stars is in and of themselves, worthy, I think, of accolades. But he also, I think, in his tenure as the person in charge of Poker Stars, made a lot of decisions that were very pro poker player. And, I think people have maybe realized, especially since he's been gone, just how generous a lot of those things and gifts. And, I think he really recognizes what it is to be a poker player and ran the company as a poker player, not just a businessman. But we have a million stories to cover, you guys. So,
and this is a good lead in, Sarah, because we're talking about generosity and paying players back and running your business in a good manner, because our number 8 story is the complete opposite of that. And I was there to witness this one firsthand. And that was the Midway Poker Tour debacle that took place in the Chicagoland area back in October. I won't go into all the details. You can find the articles. You can go back and listen to our podcast episode where we really dive into it. But basically, there was a poker tournament, and because of the charity gaming laws, they had to pay out the prizes in precious metals, in this instance silver, and they overpaid for the silver. They passed that lost value on to the players, and basically what it was the players were not getting paid the advertised amounts. As an example, the eventual winner was Renato Spehu. He was supposed to receive $55,060. He ended up getting, he got more than half of it. He ended up being shorted $16,000 on that first place prize. And a lot of other players between the first and 31 spots, which were the payouts, ended up getting shorted some amount. Some of those players got paid back. A lot of the smaller amounts did. But I believe there's still $55,000, if I recall correctly, of missing value that has not been paid back. The tournament organizers, Dan Bekovic and Jason Trezak, have went into hiding, if you will. Nobody knows where they are. I haven't heard any updates. The few players that I have talked to recently have basically given up hope that they'll ever see that money, or that if they wanted to try to get it, their best recourse would be to, a legal remedy. But by the time you take legal fees and all that into account, is it even worth it, so to speak? And unfortunately, this might be one of those where the story dies out. But if there's, I guess, any silver lining, pun was not intended there, that the tour itself, was probably a one and done thing.
It's funny, if you do the math, does the $55,000 add up to sort of the overlay that was lost in the silver transaction? Like, we're short $55K, and that's how much we overpaid for the silver.
I mean, from what I understand, if I remember correctly, the silver was worth like, oh God, I don't want to get this totally wrong, but it was something like the silver was worth $24 an ounce, but they ended up paying like $37 an ounce. At a huge markup premium. And one of the reasons was because the Attorney General's office got involved and put the kibosh on their original payout plan. I won't get into all those details. They did have a plan. The AG came in, said, you can't do it. And so they panicked, because overnight, and I think this was on a Saturday night, they had to find like $200,000 worth of silver, right? And that's not an easy thing to do for anybody, but they managed to do it. They found a silver seller, but the silver seller said, like, look, this is very unconventional. I can get you this silver, but this is my price that I'm charging for it. And so that's what they ended up paying. And, the silver dealer ended up making a tidy profit, and the players did not. The players took the brunt of that, unfortunately.
Boo to that. Well, either way, it's all for charity. So Way to go. Well, we were talking earlier in the show about the official World Series of Poker, which shockingly went down in December of 2020 / a little bit also moving into January 2021. And there was, of course, a lot of questions, I think, and speculation about whether or not it was fair then to market the World Series of Poker online main event as sort of a main event. But regardless, it was a record-breaking online tournament series, and GGPoker, which we will talk more about later in the show, sort of seamlessly stepped up and made this event happen and made it, I think, bigger than any of us anticipated. Jack?
Yeah, 5,802 entries to create a prize pool of $27,559,500. That is the biggest online poker tournament ever. Just an astounding turnout. They had guaranteed $25 million for the event. Stoyan Madanjiv, he's a big fan of the World Series of Poker. He won this online main for almost $4 million. Top four made at least $1 million. Wenling Gao, she finished in second for more than $2.7 million. A phenomenal turnout, which we were discussing, as Chad was discussing earlier, just throughout the entire course of the summer. And especially amazing for this WSOP online main event. All the sickos played, all the satellite winners played. It was an extraordinary tournament, and I look forward to them perhaps trying to pull this off year after year.
Yeah, agreed. Just add it to the list of awesome new events, I think, that will probably just continue on. And in the spirit of talking about GGPoker, we would like to also acknowledge them as one of our sponsors and go to a quick message from them. GGPoker continues to revolutionize online poker with exclusive new games and features that set it apart from the opposition. Play at neck-breaking speed on the site's exciting spin and gold jackpot sit and go events and win big, or grind it out in the weekly $300,000 guaranteed GG Masters. You guys will not want to miss out on the GGPoker bonuses. You can get either $100 in cash and free tickets, or 100% match bonus up to a maximum of $600. You guys definitely do not want to miss out on their match deposit bonus. You can check that out on PokerNews.com. Be sure to search GGPoker bonus on PokerNews.com. All right, we are back to look at item number 6 on our list, and this is one that I would have anticipated to be a little bit higher. Of course, everyone knows that I'm a sucker for controversy. I'm a sucker for drama, gossip, all the, sort of salacious things are what I am the most interested in. And so I think as a result of that, I was expecting this to be in the top 3 probably stories of 2020, but also because Daniel Negreanu and Doug Polk are both just really, really big names in poker and really outside of poker. Also, I would say they're names that at least some people outside of the poker world might actually recognize. So as these two decided to go head to head, both on the felt and also very much in the Twitter sphere, the poker world all watched drooling, I think, and excited. Now, you've been, Jeff, covering the poker side of things, but do you want to talk a little bit about this as one of our number 6 stories?
Yeah, sure. And I agree with Sarah. Maybe this should break into the top 5 based on the popularity of it all. But regardless, it has certainly drawn the attention of the poker world. Sarah said it. Negreanu and Polk have been going at it on Twitter for years and years and years. And finally, I think Daniel said, let's see, in the article, it says, quote, "If this will make you feel better and give you some type of closure from your multi-year obsession with me, deal the fucking cards." And that is exactly what they did. A 25,000 hand challenge with an opt-out for the losing player after 12,500 hands. They started in the PokerGo studio. Negreanu got that win. That session drew all sorts of attention for just the players being really, really nice to each other and being really cordial and being civil and being friendly. Doug Polk was off to a very hot start, closed the year pretty strong. At one point was up almost $1 million. The story for 2021, perhaps, is Negreanu starting to make that comeback, now down less than $500,000. You never know. The door is open for an incredible Galfond challenge-like comeback. I know we'll get to that in a little bit. So it's been great entertainment. They're playing a couple times a week. They're receiving an extraordinary amount of viewers, whether it's on GGPoker's stream or Upswing or Joey Ingram's or whatever. So I think the poker world has been fascinated by this heads-up match, and it makes sense, you know, for Negreanu to pick up on such a complex game so quickly and to be such a competitive opponent versus Doug Polk is really something. It speaks to his poker ability.
And really, I think it speaks to, you know, we all know that he watches the Rocky series before the World Series starts every year. And there is this sort of, I think, David and Goliath thing. Like, it's hard to compare, you know, Danny Negreanu to a David fully, but there's definitely this, you know, Doug is the heads up boss. Doug is the sort of like online heads up, no limit hold'em legend. And so I really do think when I saw, you know, Daniel say, there's no way I'm giving up, I was like, that's the hero that we need, you know, that's who we root for. And then to see him sort of have this comeback, of course, you know, we can't all be Phil Galfond. Like the challenges cannot all end, you know, in these beautiful wrapped up tidy bows. But I do think it's definitely, we're in a point now that the story might be getting, if nothing else, a little bit more interesting for a little while. Maybe we've got a comeback on our hands.
Yeah, I think it's captivating storyline. You know, it's a David versus Goliath matchup at the beginning. Sarah, you said it. Maybe it's Rocky Clubber or Rocky Ivan Drago. And Negreanu is starting to punch back a little bit. And Polk has taken some hits. He's taken some cuts. And we'll see if this comeback can continue. It could set up for a pretty fascinating stretch run.
Yes, which would be great too, because it's been going on for a long time.
That much is also true. Yes. I think we're on pace to end mid-February-ish or so about another month.
Maybe that's why it's number 6. Like, they're, you know, if they would have like really banged it out super fast, we would have had it right in the top 5. But speaking of sagas that have drawn on for, I think, actually, honestly, I thought this would drag on way longer. Number 5 is the Mike Postle saga winding down. Now, I hate that as a, I don't know, title of an exciting story, because anything winding down doesn't really sound like a super exciting story. But Chad, you were sort of our legal authority, if you will, as we discussed the Postle saga. And I actually thought there was some really interesting twists and turns. There was some things I think we really didn't anticipate, like Postle suing everyone else, for example.
Well, legal expert is right. I did go to law school for 1 year before dropping out because of poker. No, I'm far from a legal expert, but I was certainly trying to keep on top of this story in 2020. I agree with you, Sarah. The title, Mike Postle Saga Winds Down. I'm not a big fan, I guess, of the title. It is kind of accurate, but I don't think we've seen the last of this story. Let me get you updated on what happened in 2020. So in 2019 was the big scandal, right? Everything went down. The Joey Ingram investigation, everything blew up. There was a lawsuit filed by Veronica Brill. Mac Verstandig was the lawyer, and a bunch of other plaintiffs, right? And that lawsuit was the big crux of the Mike Postle cheating situation, really. They were trying to lay out the case in court. It wasn't criminal charges, mind you. This was a civil case. They were seeking damages from Mike Postle, from Stone's Casino, and from Justin Karitis, who was an employee at Stone's. And long story short, this motion ended up getting dismissed, but with some leeway to amend. And what that basically meant was the motion stated that the damages were too speculative, right? You have to be able to show I lost exact amount, I was damaged this much. When it was like a cheating case, it's too speculative. You know, he won the pot. So that does that mean you lost that pot, and who lost that much? With all these plaintiffs, the judge just wasn't going to get into that. And he basically said as much. So he dismissed it. And, you know, California law allows for that. There was precedent in that regard. And basically he said, by dismissing it, the part against Mike Postle was dismissed, but they could amend the other part against Stones and Justin Karitis to show specific damages. And they could do that in the form of rake, right? They could calculate the number of hands played and the rake that was taken and have a firm number that would hold up in the court of law. And that's what they were going to do before they did. And before it went too far, though, Stones, Justin Karitis, and the plaintiffs all settled. They made an agreement that basically the players who agreed to it got like $645. It wasn't very much. It was better than nothing, I suppose. And as part of that, the plaintiffs, via their representative, Mac Verstandig, had to issue a statement saying that there was no evidence to suggest that Stones and Justin Koritis had any wrongdoing, participated in any kind of cheating. However, Mike Postle was not listed in that. He was not part of this. He was not part of that statement. That left the door open for maybe more things. But what ended up happening was Postle turned around and decided to file a lawsuit of his own for defamation for $300 million against all kinds of different people. Daniel Negreanu, we already talked about, Joy Ingram, PokerNews, many, many more. ESPN was on there because of the segment with Scott Van Pelt. And the status with that lawsuit is basically going nowhere because Postle's lawyers dropped him as a client because he basically stopped responding to them, from what we understand. Maybe there's some underlying reasons. Who knows? That's kind of where we left off in 2020. We also know that Phil Galfond and Matt Berkey have crowdsourced an effort to really compile all the statistics and hands from the Mike Postle situation, which was something that's never been done, right? Joey Ingram did his deep dives. He watched a lot of streams, but all the information was never really compiled to have more of a numbers-based, scientific-based, evidence-based argument against Postle. But apparently Phil Galfond, Matt Berkey, and the community that they've put together are working on that. And that's why I said at the top of this that we might not have seen the end of it, because two reasons. That's still in the background, and then Mike Postle's still in the background. Who knows what he's going to do? Is he going to try to slink away? Is he going to try to revive this lawsuit that he has going? It's hard to say, but I can't imagine that we've heard the last of it one way or the other.
And I didn't even know who Mike Postle was in 2018. Now just a household name, you know. Well, speaking of cheating scandals, which it's always some of my favorite stories, to be honest. I think there's some of the most interesting stories and raise some of the most interesting questions within a community that's essentially self-policing for the most part. There's several of these. I think we should sort of like break them down, individually. I think they belong in one major category, but they each have their own sort of taste and nuance and story. And actually, it's very interesting because I think we're going to have Jungle Man on the show next week. So maybe this is one of the hard-hitting questions we can have Chad ask our boy Jungle Man. Let's get into, so the title of our number 4 is high profile cheating scandals. And the first one, which we'll come back to, has to do with, we know, the very explosive tweets that Bill Perkins likes to throw out there, which he said is makes Mike Postle look like a church service, I want to say, if I remember it correctly. But first, let's talk a little bit about this Jungle Man thing. This I found pretty interesting because maybe it shocks me that this doesn't happen more often, maybe, or maybe like how they catch people, I'm not sure. But Daniel Jungleman Cates is caught ghosting in high stakes cash games. Bill Perkins says that this whole scam makes Mike Postle's look like a church service, which later I think people were not able to stomach or believe that. For whatever reason, is anyone else's like PokerNews page not showing the tweets? I keep having to
Yeah, they're like cut off on the side.
Yeah, so weird. I keep having to go to the actual tweets. But Jeff, do you want to speak to this at all? I feel like there wasn't really ever that much of the resolution of this didn't feel public.
Yeah, and I'm sure they privately resolved this. Long story short, Sina Taleb was having Jungle play on his account, and Jungle says that was for very few sessions, said he never played against Dan Bilzerian, who also chimed in and said that Jungle cheated both Perkins and him out of some money by effectively ghosting. Again, Jungle issued I wouldn't call it an apology, more of a statement, as PokerNews calls it, a long non-apology on his own Twitter account. And he says, listen, yeah, I played under this guy's account. Multi-accounting is not right. I accept that I'm a role model. I hold myself to a high standard, and I'll behave better in the future. He says multi-accounting is wrong, ghosting is wrong, and I need to be better on that, and so does everybody. So it kind of sparked a hint of outrage about ghosting. Ghosting happens in a lot of private cash games, and a lot of private cash games are now taking steps to limit the use of ghosting. So there you have it from Jungle. That's about all I got.
But how could you, right? It's like anything online. It's interesting because I do feel that as a poker community, there is this sort of overwhelming responsibility, if you will, to have this, morality or ethics or whatever it is. And I don't know. I mean, how could you ever really stop that?
I mean, how could you stop the ghosting? You could just do like all your online poker games now have to be on Zoom, where everybody can see you at any certain time, or they can say, hey, I want to see you right now, and you have to accommodate that request, that kind of thing. But other than that,
could maybe have the other person just
right, and you could pretend to be playing on your phone. I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard. I don't know. It's just hard. And it's interesting because I think, as a poker world, sort of, if you look at what the general population would see, it's, filled with these ideas of sort of cowboys and aces up your sleeve. And generally speaking, I actually think, especially the high stakes poker world, because it has to police itself, is very vested in being people of integrity. And so I don't know, it's interesting. And Chad, I'm sure you're going to get a very detailed and interesting answer on Monday from our boy Jungle Man. The second story, which is actually something I wanted to ask you guys about, because I think the vernacular maybe is clear to everyone, maybe not clear to everyone. Fedor Cruz crushes but uses real-time assistance. So I think real-time assistance also became sort of a subject of controversy and opinions in 2020. What constitutes real-time assistance, etc. Chad, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so trying to explain it in a terms that a layman might, or a recreational player might understand, is, when you're playing in a poker tournament or a cash game at your local casino, you are facing a big bet or something on the river. You don't know what to do. You sit there and you think about what you need to do, right? You can't pull up your phone and Google, what should I do here? You can't pull out a poker book. You can't pull out a cheat sheet. You've got to make your decision. And if you were to be able to pull on those things, it's like real-time assistance, right? In the online realm, there are programs out there that, based upon what comes in the flop, that if this program is running, it can tell you the optimal move at the real, as real time. That's why it's real-time assistance. As it's happening, it can tell you this is the most profitable way for you to play this hand. And that is what Fedor Cruz was accused of doing, and really very controversial, right? Like, it's not really playing poker. It's just following this GTO game flow, if you will. And of course, you make a lot of money if you do that. If you're always making the perfect decisions, you're going to win a lot of money playing poker. And but using assistance is a big no-no. And I think in 2020, real-time assistance, RTA, was a buzzword that came out of it, if you will.
And this would be another situation where I think it begs the question, how would you ever know? And how did anyone know in this spot?
In this case, it was his roommates, I believe, at the time, that rolled over on him, right? That kind of exposed it. Yeah, and it's hard. I guess it'd be hard to know that, unless there is somebody who sees it happening, unless these online sites have ways to detect it, it would be tough to catch. I know this summer, when the WSOP bracelet events were happening, I had a couple players, I asked if they would send me pictures of them at their grind station, if where they're playing. And in a couple of the pictures, they had like, these are high-end pros, so they had a couple programs opened. And I don't think these were programs they were using while they played, but people still just seen it there, or right next to where they're playing. So it just was this whole ugly controversy. I felt really bad about that, because everybody was so on the lookout for RTA. And I don't know. It's a very big concern. It's things like that that really have me hesitant to play online in unregulated poker markets, which we know here in the US is there's not many options for us, unfortunately.
And the Fedor Cruz story drew plenty of the headlines. It became public, but I think a couple of these online sites, the regulated ones, the big ones, have cracked down on a lot more than just Fedor, and they release some of that information, and some of the information they do not release. But I think that they have some sort of software in play that at least helps detect the use of this RTA, and that software will only get better moving forward, but as will the RTA software. So it's like, the cheating is getting more efficient, but so are the security measures. So it'll be a consistent fight when dealing with the world of online poker.
And there's a story that isn't included in this, and maybe I'm trying to remember exactly who it is, but I remember reading maybe a month or two ago about, I want to say it was a Danish player, some sort of like a Scandi poker player who was finally maybe being arrested or prosecuted for being involved in like putting these Trojan horses on a bunch of other high stakes.
I don't know the exact details. I know the exact story you're talking about, and I believe it was actually prison time. Like it made its way through court, and that he was facing some serious consequences and actually going to prison for it.
Man, it's good. It's good gems. See these guys. Because I remember being at the EPT in Barcelona and them talking about these players who at the Hotel Arts like realized that their computers had Trojan horses installed on them at some point while they were there. It's like very, these are some very high level complicated scams, but man, when you're talking about the kind of money that you're talking about when you're looking at high stakes poker, it's pretty intense and worth it. Now the first segment of number 4, which it feels like there's just not that much on it, is PPP Poker updates its security protocols. Doesn't compared to the other stories, it just kind of feels
this is like one of Chad's points that, on the unregulated apps, sure, they say they're ramping up security. And they probably are, but again, it's a unregulated app for the most part. So
yeah, right. Well, the number 3 story of the year, which has nothing to do with the fact that they're also a sponsor of the podcast and, deeply connected to PokerNews, is the Galfond Challenge. I think we've talked so much about this for lots of reasons, but one being that it was probably the number 3 story to come out of 2020. But more or less the gist of the story is that, Phil Galfond comes out of semi-retirement. He's basically just been run it once, not playing so much online poker. And he and his team came up with this fantastic marketing campaign to challenge some of the other great high stakes PLO players. And, he ended up in, I think, an unexpected spot against, it was Veni Vidi, right? I should probably just open this. I feel like I know the story by heart, but against Veni Vidi, things I think started to feel hopeless. He decided to pay the fee to just take a break, get his head together, released a statement, which was just uber humble and, basically saying, wow, I didn't realize how sort of out of the mix I'd been. I've got to put my nose to the grindstone. I'm going to try to study and get my game right, and came back to win the challenge against Veni Vidi. And then as the challenge has gone on, and in fact, maybe it is even time for an update on the most recent challenge, which has been against Chance Kornuth, who we didn't expect to do as well as he had. And the odds that Galfond gave him were very, very much in the favor of Chance Kornuth to win tons of money should he just happen to crush. And he started taking a 6-figure lead or something. And I think since then now Phil has got it all back, right?
Yeah, Phil is up about $468,000. Chance had a good session the other day. Chance getting 4-1 on that $250K side bet. Chance with the chance to win $1 million if he can find a comeback. But Sarah, you said it, that comeback against Veni Vidi, down 900,000 euros and finding the way to win, coming back over 45 buy-ins. It's just, that was absolutely absurd. Certainly a memorable moment in 2020.
So absurd. And I think just the way he handled it was amazing. Mm-hmm. And, again, it comes back to that hero story that we all love. The David and Goliath, if you will, the guy who comes from behind. It's like every awesome high school football movie we've ever seen, where it comes down to the last, crazy pass they have to do. Or you see me using the football terminology as one does. But yeah, I mean, I think it was one of the best stories, not just because it was interesting and because it was poker related, but because that's really the story, right? That's like the human story, overcoming all odds and also like winning a lot of money and having a poker site and all that. That's extra nice. And in the spirit of our relationship with Phil Galfond and with his fantastic, poker site, Run It Once Poker, let's just hear a little word from them.
Run It Once is a brand new online poker site founded by poker superstar Phil Galfond, who has the player's experience at heart. Run It Once plans to make online poker fun and less predatory while providing ample rewards and innovative features at the same time. All new Run It Once players who download the software via PokerNews are entitled to a 100% deposit bonus worth up to €600. What makes this welcome bonus unique is that you can make as many deposits as you like for that first 30 days after your first deposit. This makes it perfect for those players who do not want to or cannot deposit $600 in one chunk. Be sure to check it out at once.run/pnpod. That's once.run/pnpod.
All right. Now we've only got 2 more stories to break from 2020 for you guys.
Number one's a real banger.
Oh my gosh. You
just
guys
wait for that one.
You guys are going to just love it. It's tremendous.
Sarah, let me introduce the number 2 story
Go ahead.
of 2020. All right, we're talking about a emerging player in the poker community, talking about none other than Mr. Jeff Platt. We really rising up as we talk. No, I'm just joking.
Yeah,
Jeff, you was on that. You're on that Pocket Fives breakout list. And another breakout this year was really, we've talked about it a lot. They're friends of the podcast, GGPoker, right? And I've actually heard this. I've had people in Wisconsin here come to me and ask, what's with GGPoker? Who are they? Where did they come from? Now, they don't have a big imprint here in the US, obviously, but around the world, they have emerged as a big time player. And this is for a number of reasons. They introduced the GG Masters, which is one of the biggest weekly online tournaments that takes place. PokerNews is doing reviews, previews, and recaps from each of those final tables every Monday and Tuesday. They're chock full of big names who are winning big 6-figure prizes. And then I think what really took them to the next level was the partnership that they have developed with the World Series of Poker, right? They've got the World Series of Poker circuits. They've got the World Series of Poker bracelet events. And I think that's a relationship we're going to see continue moving forward as both parties seem to be really happy with it. Now, of course, they've got Daniel Negreanu as their Keystone ambassador, but they also added, love it or hate it, Dan Bilzerian to the slate of ambassadors in 2020. And just overall, they seem to be trying to make a name for themselves in the poker world, and they are succeeding at it, in my opinion. They are also, I believe they were talking about pros they want in their ecosystem or pros they don't want in their ecosystem before, right? And trying to keep on top of the things we talked about earlier in this show, like real-time assistance and their software. For anybody who's ever played on it or seen somebody like Negreanu streaming, it's very top of the line. They got some great features like Peel the River, and you can buy action right in the game client. I wish I could play on it. I can't. I'm from the United States, but fingers crossed maybe one day. And who knows if this relationship with GGPoker and WSOP continues and GG gets into the US and that continues to expand, who knows what the possibilities could lead to there. Maybe we'd see some cross promotion online between those two sites.
And you'll see some major marketing from GG throughout the course of the World Series of Poker main event episodes on ESPN. And I think that's a great sign to all of us that they plan to make a big impact in the United States of America. Sure, it might take a while, but they're going to be here. They're going to get here. And that is great news for all of us. To Chad's point, the software is the best. The site's the best. I think yesterday they had 350,000 players online at one point, just on like a random Tuesday. Pretty solid numbers, I would say. The Super Millions broadcast they do, the World Series of Poker circuit. They're taking on the Doug versus Daniel. It's just all awesome.
Jeff, you made a good point. I remember being in Vegas during the World Series of Poker at the end of the year when they were filming and seeing that GGPoker little banner around the table, right? The inside of the actual table where players put their chips in their hole cards. And I remember just thinking, wow, that's the first time I've really seen GG Poker, explicitly branded in the United States or for a US market, if you will. Of course, they do work with us. They do work with other poker sites and things, but that to me was like the first big, we're going to introduce ourselves to the public, was that seeing that and realizing that relationship with the WSOP was going to be that vehicle.
I mean, they're giving away $7 million throughout the month of January. And sure, they're an extremely profitable site at this point with this kind of a turnout. But to put that much money back into that ecosystem, to give back to players via all these leaderboards, they have a bad beat free roll. They call it the GG Care free roll. If you suffer a bad beat one day, all good, you're put into a 30K free roll the next day. They've introduced flip and goes to make the game more fun. It's just overall, the site provides an incredible experience for players, and it'll only get bigger from here, which is wild to think about.
Which, speaking of, if you're looking for giveaways and you can, for example, play on GG Poker, GG is going to be giving away a bunch of stuff on PokerNews starting tomorrow. Let me look at this little thing. If you follow us on Twitter, they're going to be giving away 15 ticket bundles a day for 7 days. So this is going to start on January 14th. And these are all it's like really easy wins. I think you just either have to retweet or reply something very simple you'll see in the tweets. But this is for their sort of new poker variant, the flip and goes, which if I understand, it's like you get 3 cards and then you discard 1 card and then everybody ends up going all in. And I think it looks really fun. Whether or not there's like obviously a certain amount of skill, there's like a skill component in it, but it just, after watching several of them, it just looks really fun. So if you don't already, be sure to follow the PokerNews Twitter to try to get on board with some of these free tickets. Gosh, I can't wait for poker to come back to America. Even when they were saying they're giving it away, I was like, man, this sounds like a game I could get behind. This is definitely Sarah's game. We are about to get to the #1 spot. But, Jeff, I really feel like you being in this Pocket Fives list should have been the #1.
Yeah, clearly.
And I don't understand why that hasn't happened. But I just want to read this to you guys, the first line of Jeff's Pocket Fives breakout, person of the year. It just listen to this. It would be fair to say that poker commentator Jeff Platt could have and rightfully should have been named a rising star from a year ago, which I totally agree with. And blah, blah, blah. Like it took way too long to get there. Then it goes on. And then wait till you hear this. If Nick Schulman is the current GOAT when it comes to poker commentary, then Platt is the people's champion. And I just love that. And I feel like Platt, lower third, people's champion should be what all of your commentary from here on out has as your lower third descriptor. What a beautiful thing to be. And we're really grateful to have you on the Poker News podcast, which is why I feel like you are really ducking out by not doing the Jungle Man interview on Monday and asking all the hard-hitting questions that the people want to know and putting that
Sarah,
on Chad.
And I just want to follow up on the Pocket Fives interview. I want to read you the text that my mom sent after she listened to last week's podcast. She said, "That Jeff Platt is so talented. He's handsome too. I Googled him. I wish he was my son and not you."
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Real text. Real text. You guys are way, way too kind. It's just an honor to be associated with you two. Wonderful human beings. And yeah, that's how I got it. I do use the Rock gifts a lot on Twitter, and he is the people's champion. So
that makes sense.
Of course, people's champion obviously makes perfect sense.
And also, just like the Rock, you're so rich. So
yeah, just like the Rock. Same bottom line.
That's an easy way. Well, this is a really tough one, you guys. 2020, there was a lot going on. There was a lot of stories to come out of 2020. And obviously the most important one was coronavirus.
I feel like coronavirus was the book that all the other stories were written in, right? Like it was the all-encompassing veil over everything that happened, except for the first 2 months of the year. That was normal. That was business as usual. But in March up until now, it's dictated everything. And I know from my perspective, and I guess we can each maybe share a little something of how it really impacted. I know for us at PokerNews, being the head of live reporting, we went from covering 88 events in 2019 just in the United States, not including the rest of the world that my other colleagues do, to covering hardly any. All the live poker scene just completely shut down. We've seen it start to return here in the latter half of 2020. We have Vegas and the Venetian doing some events. The Seminole Hard Rocks down in Florida are doing some live events. Cash games have sprung up, but we're seeing, we've had to adapt to the new world with maybe plexiglass or hand sanitizers, wearing masks. It's a totally different world all around, but we're talking about poker here, and it's definitely changed the way we see things and operate here in the poker community.
Real quick, just as I'm scrolling through this article, and then I'll share kind of how everything changed as well. So there are a couple pictures of Fenton Hand from PokerStars Team Online. And the first picture of him, all due respect, is just absolutely terrible. I mean, the Europeans have a different sense of style, I guess, than Americans, but he's wearing a sweater that must be 6 sizes too big. And he's doing some interview. But the second picture of Fenton is fantastic, not just because he's a little bit more dressed up. He's got the sport coat and all. He's got the PokerStars patch. But next to him, with a bright, lovely smile, rocking the MSPT shirt, is one Chad Holloway. Chad, where was this from? Where is this picture from?
That was from Run It Up Reno. It must have been, late 2019.
There it is. And that.
Oh, actually, no, I'm sorry. I'm gonna backtrack on that one, because I just seen the byline on this photo is Neil Stoddard. Neil has never been to Run It Up Reno. So this was, yes, it must have been PSPC, because I did play with Fenton. I think it was the first time I really met him and got to know him. That just jogged my memory. Yeah, that was PSPC. Good memory. Good callback with that photo.
Nacho Barbero is like blurry in the background behind you guys. That might not be true, but he does still come to all the PokerStars events.
It was kind of funny. Real quick story aside, in that PSPC, I was playing. This was a big tournament. Probably the only 25K I'll ever play, and I was using my knowledge to my benefit, and by that I mean I knew when some players would sit down. Like, oh, that's John Andress. He just shipped 400K last month. And other people might not know who he is. So I thought it would behoove my game if everybody knew who he was, so that he just wasn't they didn't just assume he was some qualifier, right? So I'd just be like, hey, John, congratulations on winning that high roller for 400K last month, or whatever the scenario was. And I did that a few times throughout day one. And I don't think those players were too happy. They were gracious and kind of, oh, thanks. But I was definitely outing them to the table as far as their poker skills and accomplishments.
Chad single-handedly changed the whole dynamic of the PSPC.
Yep.
And you know what they say, and Mr. Cruz, or whatever his name was, Fedor will also agree, snitches get stitches, Chad. Everyone knows. Dude, you don't come for these people. They will come for you.
Maybe that's why they turned me down for the interviews all the time.
Or just give you the worst ones ever. What was your experience, Jeff, of the Rona being like, you're kind of, are you on salary? Can I ask that? Or are you like a freelance
sure. You can
guy,
ask that. I was on salary last year. Fortunately, we reached an agreement at the end of 2019 of a guaranteed salary for 2020, which was just very, very fortunate in timing. Our broadcasts have changed just like the rest of the world has changed. Not as many people go into work. They work from home. Our broadcasts, not as many are in the studio. A lot of them, I can be home, Brent Hanks can be home, and we can fire off the commentary in that direction. We made a run at a virtual studio at Poker Central, didn't get the best of reviews, dropped that, switched to a different type of commentary and presentation for our online poker tournaments. Maybe the virtual stuff will come back in the future. Regardless, there is an audience for these big online poker final tables with a lot of money up for grabs. And even when we quote unquote get back to normal, I do think that we will see more and more online poker broadcast. And then before the world gets back to normal, I think that Poker Central proved at the end of 2020 that you can still pull off certain shows. So they were still able to shoot high stakes poker and Poker After Dark and the World Series of Poker main event by creating a bubble of sorts. And that has been proven to just work out. And so I think there'll be more programming on the way, but the online programming is going to be here for years to come.
I agree. I think as an industry, it was actually just really lucky, because I think as this, plays out as the years go on, what we're going to get is more content, not less. What we're going to get is, a focus on something that maybe we really wouldn't have focused on had this all not happened, and really on players that I think have been sort of, a lot of them have been maybe like mysterious, but not, so famous. I do think for poker, I'm always trying to explain to people when they ask, about my job, that the fact that we don't have online poker in the United States is a big part of why I'm not in the United States very often, because online poker is a humongous part of the poker industry and the poker space. And so sort of shifting our content, I think, to highlight that more and to make that more accessible for people to see and watch, I think has actually been something that was a cool shift that ended up happening. And obviously I overall thought that it was the best thing that ever could have happened for me because I just had a baby.
Yeah.
I snapped my leg off. Everyone was like, what are you going to do after like the baby? You have all this travel. And I was like, I have no idea what I'm going to do. I'm just going to have to figure it out as it happens, just deal with it as it comes. And it just happened that basically 2 months before my maternity was over, COVID happened. Nobody was going to leave their houses. So I didn't have to face, what this was going to look like yet. And I also couldn't walk for a while, which would have made it a lot harder to travel. So for me, the Rona has been just a wonderful time to be at home and make content from home. I'm probably the only person that was like, 2020 was awesome. I think too, like after you have a baby, you kind of want and you can't walk very good. You just kind of want to be at home, and everyone else was at home. So I didn't feel bad. When you can't walk and you're like trapped inside, you're like, the whole world is going on without me. But actually the whole world was not going on. Everyone was stuck at home with me. It was like we had a communal ankle snap, and it was great. And also, since I already had it, I don't have to worry about it as much, I feel like, which there was definitely a few months where I was really worried about getting it. And
you were struggling for a little bit when you did get it, right? It was like it lasted for a while.
For like a month. And it was so hard to work. I was so tired. But yeah, now it's like, I'm glad that I don't have to stress out about it as much. And neither of you have had it yet, huh?
I don't think that I have, Chad.
I don't know.
Not that I know of. I think I've taken 3 tests since it happened. 2 of those at the World Series of Poker, and they've all come back negative. So, and I got sick once, but I took one of the tests and it came back negative. So I guess not.
Still hate the throat swabs. Hopefully more nose swabs than throat swabs in 2021.
Amen. I'm totally with you. I'm like the only one too. I was like, please no.
No, this is much better than I'm like, is it really? Just gag on a stick. Yeah.
I don't think so, guys. All right. Well, as we said, next week, we've got some cool stuff for you guys. We've got a little interview Chad did with Jerry Yang. We're going to have an interview with the man, the myth, the legend that is the Jungle Man. I'm actually kind of excited about that. I do feel like he's got his toes dipped in a lot of controversial things, but he's always just like also kind of an interesting character. Remember when he released that like super crazy kind of music video thing with like the masks and the hot girls? Like, I don't know. I feel like he's always got his hands in some weird stuff. And I hope it's interesting. We'll see. We appreciate you guys listening. Of course, if you like, rate and review, we always appreciate it. But either way, we just appreciate you guys listening, and we hope that 2021 kicks as much ass for you as 2020 kicked for me. Deuces.
The key to winning big is using every little bit of knowledge to your advantage. At Oddschecker, we give you the edge. Better odds, better picks, and better offers to make you a better bettor. Why settle for less? Quickly compare the odds at every sportsbook to ensure that you're getting the best price to maximize your return. Visit us at www.oddschecker.com/US. Oddschecker. Sports betting smarter.